Thanks for tuning in to the Medevac podcast, powered by the Robert Irvine Foundation, whose mission is to support and strengthen the physical and mental well-being of our nation's heroes and their families. I'm one of your hosts, David Reed.
And I'm your other host, Christian Myers. Thank you very much for joining us today on the Medevac podcast. If you're new here, there's a price for the show. You have to share it with a friend or family member if you get something out of today's episode. Today's episode is actually kind of special, a little bit different. So we're gonna take a little bit of a different turn here, and also we are celebrating 3 years of active recording with the Medevac podcast.
On the podcast, yes, over 130 interviews at this point.
Yeah, we are 3 years old officially,
and have released every week for 3 years.
I think we missed a couple here and there, but overall,
just the holidays. Come on.
Yeah, get some time off every now and then. Our guest today is Sam McCamey. He is a former Marine? I don't know. I never
still
get that
a Marine.
Right. Yeah,
always a Marine. Always a Marine. Always a Marine.
He was in the Marine Corps for about 6 years. He was a bulk fuel specialist as well as a rifle and pistol instructor, and now he's transitioned to the dark side, the Air Force, where he is currently becoming a 4N medic on his way to being a flight medic. So, welcome, Sam.
Thanks for guys. Oh boy, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks for coming in. Little background about how we met as well as through the Terra Arm Attack event.
Yes, and at the MRF event specifically, that was the first one, and I had never done a MRF up to that point, but just right place, right time, being out here for training, and then Memorial Day MRF came up, and I was like, you know what, that looks like the place to be.
Yeah, what a great event and a great turnout. That was a brutal workout for sure.
Yeah, that was something else.
Yeah, and that was your first time doing it?
Yeah, that was my first MRF. So I was happy to just finish.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's an accomplishment in itself. Like just completing it. It's a hard ass workout. I do not blame you in the least.
It's just designed to suck.
Suck. And then by the end of it though, like the biggest grin on my face, like ear to ear for being there, and the people that were there. Everything about that day was really good.
It's a good day, and I will say that Texas adds a whole new element to that workout, just being miserable heat and humidity.
Hot.
It was very hot.
You just started melting before we started.
Yeah, it was hot. I think I got a little burn, but not so bad.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Let's kind of rewind it back and start how we always did with why you joined the Marines. I think you said you were highly motivated by your grandpa as well.
Yeah, so my grandfather was in World War II, and we just celebrated the 80th anniversary of D-Day, where you guys got to go out and do that stuff. I got to watch a whole bunch of documentaries. That was really great. He was on a patrol craft at the invasion at Omaha Beach, and my understanding from my family's telling of it was that they were minesweepers.
Okay.
But that might have been lost in translation coming down the line. He was there, and he was on a patrol craft. That's what I have. But that is to say, there wasn't anyone in my immediate family who was in the military. So the military for me, I would say, came naturally as far as my desire to do it. Naturally, but very aggressively. I knew exactly where I was going and what I wanted to do as far as what branch I was joining. And I was like, this is it. Like, I'm done. Like, as soon as high school's over, if I can leave before then I'll do that, because I was terrible at school. So,
yeah, that's crazy on the inspiration from the grandfather, and being there on the 80th anniversary was so insightful. Like, just being able to see from the cliffs where these guys came in on the beach in that just elevated position where it was just fish in a barrel. Minesweepers too. Interestingly enough, I was doing some reading about D-Day and some of these interesting technologies that they had for getting some of the equipment through the beaches. They had a carpet roller tank. Have you ever heard of that one?
No.
Literally laid out carpet. Just was a total big blunder, obviously.
Yeah,
but
doesn't really work so well.
So he was on Omaha Beach, so that's pretty incredible. Coming from that and having that inspire you to join as well. So we went kind of Army versus Marine on that one. So what was kind of your thought process there?
So my grandfather was in the Navy, and so the Marine Corps was Pardon me. I have to imagine it was their excellent marketing at the time. So that would have been. I mean, I remember the Marine Corps being a thing in my brain since I was like a little guy.
Mm-hmm.
I remember them like slaying the dragon and like just being motivated and being like, this is hard. Do you want to do something hard? Because we're not going to baby you. And that was the whole idea.
Mm-hmm.
And how can you deny the uniform? You know?
Yeah.
So
They do look the coolest.
Yeah.
I miss it the most.
Yeah.
Especially with Air Force blues now.
Yeah, well,
The truck driver.
you take the rough with the smooth.
Yeah.
And so did that. There was an Army guy who tried to poach me at one point. I was 16. I was walking to my job, and like just as you're walking, they have the big recruiter centers, and it was just like two dudes outside smoking and joking. And he was like, "Hey man, what you doing? Like, where are you going? This, that, and the third." And I got to talk with him, and basically I was like, "Yeah, you know, I'm joining or whatever, but I'm going to the Marine Corps." And he was like, "You're breaking my fucking heart right now." I'm like, "That's what it is. Sorry."
Yeah.
And so off to the Marine Corps I went
So you left right after high school?
as soon as possible.
Okay.
Yeah. I was delayed a little bit. I mean, my name was signed on the dotted. I wasn't getting out of anything.
Sure.
I went in October 17th of 2016.
Okay.
I was born in 97. And so October 17th of 2016, right after graduation in that previous like May.
What were you doing with your time from May to October?
Just kind of working out, really.
Just getting into shape.
Trying, yeah, doing my best. I wasn't big into working out. I didn't like the gym. I don't even really like the gym now. I like working out like at home. But I was trying to do like everything I knew to do at that point as like a young 18-year-old kid who really didn't know anything about it, and just being like, I should probably do some push-ups and maybe go for a run. You know.
I think it's interesting to note that the Marine Corps has maintained those values and ethos for quite some time across the years. Most of the branches now are struggling with recruiting, except the Marine Corps, because they maintain that, hey, you want to do something that's hard?
Yeah.
Come join, and we're not going to lower the standard for it.
As far as I can tell, the Marines recruit themselves. And what I mean by that is a recruiter he's talking to the kid that's sitting in front of him, but he's also talking to the young version of himself and the things that would have got him excited to try and join the Marine Corps. Do you want to go travel? Maybe you want to go, I don't know, shoot bad guys in the face, because like that's a desire. When I was 9/11 happened when I was 3, right? So I was a kid when that happened. Mom and dad came home, and so I'm a different generation where we didn't get to see that and like have that fire kind of instilled necessarily, like from like, okay, 9/11 happened and I can go join on Monday kind of deal, right? I had to take the long linear path of waiting throughout time to eventually join and still feel like I was doing my part and earning my keep, which I feel like has been the driving factor for almost all of my decisions, is wanting to know that I earned it, that I earned my place and what I'm doing now.
Well, the Marine Corps is certainly the place to do that.
I thought so.
Yeah.
That is not a shared mentality or a common mentality these days. I do have to admit that is a lot of people are looking for the easy button these days, and to completely fight against it and go the hard route purposefully. Not many people choose to do that.
And I think that's why we have, 20% of military age males qualify to join the military.
Yeah.
3/4
And
of
a staggering
the population.
statistic as well, the obesity count in
boy.
America. I just read about this. Do you know what the percentage is? 46%.
I do think that the Army is actually at the same rate of that, though. Not even jokingly, I think the Army also has like a 50% obesity rate right now.
Yeah.
This is not good.
Neither here nor there, but that is an issue. It is an issue that needs to be addressed.
It is. It's a whole issue, and it needs to be addressed. I think the body positivity thing, I get it, I love it, but the heart does not see it that way. When it is
No,
Filled
when
with
it
black.
is surrounded.
by a bunch of subcutaneous fat.
Yes. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic for a different day. So how did that Marine mentality look for you? I mean, obviously you said you tracked that since 9/11, you're obviously a little too young to track that at the time.
Yeah.
But you did get to see what the war was developing into
Yeah, a
as you
little
were
bit.
growing up and as you were going through high school. You probably had friends that were going back, in and out of there as well. So what was that experience like for you, having to like wait?
Having to wait by the time you like get into your teenage years, like just kept perpetually getting more difficult and more more and more impatient. I always knew that college was never going to be for me. A lot of people, like their family, they're like, hey, go for like a year and then like tell me if you don't like it. My mom tried to get me to do that, and I was like, look, that's not going to happen. She tried to offer me like $100 to finish a book. Couldn't do it. And like that was like 8-year-old money. It was like not happening. So I knew that wasn't going to be my route, and I knew the Marine Corps was. And I didn't have a lot of people, I guess, in my life who I got to talk to about the military. The military wasn't a thing that I got a lot of exposure to. Come to think of it, like there was my grandfather, and maybe if like my dad wanted to go to like the VFW or something, which my dad was not in the military, but like he always, when my dad was young, he would go to the VA hospital and like just talk to the veterans and like play his guitar when he was like a teenager, young guy. So it was very important, and it felt like the right thing to do. I think is how I would chalk it up. But I didn't have a lot of people who had went and like come back and I got to talk to. I didn't have a lot of people to talk to about it anyway. So I just had to sit and wait and do my best and then take it as it came.
Yeah. So what was that highlight of your Marine service?
The highlight of my Marine Corps time, I was a reservist that entire time. Even as a reservist, I got on active orders for a while. And in typical Marine Corps fashion, I was signing 29-day orders, so they didn't have to give me any BAH, and I didn't rate. So like technically, I never rated the GWAT, so like I don't wear it on my rack now even. But I did that for about a year, and what was very rewarding about that was getting a lot more experience, not only in my MOS, as a bulk fueler, but also at my small reserve unit, being one of 11 active staff that are there full time. I was on every single funeral honors that we had. So Headquarters Marine Corps gets names of Marines who recently have been deceased, and with like our unit, say like a 2 to 3 hour radius of that unit, we're doing any funeral. And so that's like older generation guys who were in the Marine Corps, got out, lived their life, and have now passed on, or young guys too. Excuse me. And they get a funeral honor. So it would be 3 Marines. I was on that detail. I started as a bugler. What they won't tell you about the bugle is that it's actually a little machine inside the bugle horn that you press, and it plays taps.
Oh, really?
Oh,
So
that might have been a secret to just keep to
Oh,
yourself.
man. Ruined it.
Ruined it.
That's so funny.
That is.
what are the odds that everybody can play taps that you
Really?
see?
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
Wow.
That's really
mean-
funny. So you just put it to your mouth and hit the button?
Because there's a way you do it, right? Like I hold it at my side, the volume is turned all the way up, and then I press the button, and then as it comes up to my mouth, it like by the time it's at my mouth, okay, it has started. And then I'd like move my lungs and play the part, because like the family, they don't know, but they're still getting the full effect.
Sure.
there.
Yeah.
I haven't met anybody that could play taps like all the way through and like legitly. anyway.
I guess
And
on a bugle too. Yeah.
on a bugle, not a trumpet.
Yeah.
Like,
That's very interesting.
yeah, it is, but I don't think it's bad.
No,
Yeah, no.
You know?
it's not. I mean, I get it.
It ensures accuracy.
Yeah, and it's for the family.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I did a lot of funerals. I did the bugle, and then I eventually like graduated to doing the flag folding, and that probably meant more to me than anything. Every funeral was its own, and I treated it as its own. And every family was their own family. I never wanted to go in there jaded or what have you. I probably, and I hope I'm not like exaggerating or coming off in that way, but like if last count, I think I did about like 200 funerals.
Wow.
In my time doing that, and I tried to treat every family as their own. I never presented any flags, but I did get to fold a lot of flags. And I really did try to put like purpose and meaning into every single fold of that flag, and that hit home for me every time I did it.
Sure.
I would say that would be the highlight of my Marine Corps career, was being allowed the honor and the privilege to be that funeral honor detail for that family and fold that flag or play taps.
It's got to be quite taxing as well, though.
Can be.
I mean, over 200 funerals. It's very somber.
Can be. I would say in a positive way, a lot of the vast majority of those funerals that we did were people who were in the Marine Corps, got out, and lived a full life.
Yes.
So I'm not going to 20-something-year-old's funeral 200 times.
That just lost their life in Afghanistan
Exactly.
or Iraq. You know?
And a lot of those funerals were at like I'm from Delaware, so it's like the Delaware Dale Vets Memorial. And a vast majority there were private like funeral locations, private cemeteries, things like that. But a vast majority of them were at the Delaware Veterans Memorial Center. And like in those grounds, like I have one buddy who is buried at one Del Vet Center. And so having done so many funerals there, being very familiar with that place, like it was always very special.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Well, that sounds like a beautiful opportunity, and it sounds like you were the right person for the job too, because there's a lot of people that could, like you said, get jaded or treat that as, well, it's just another funeral, and they become a little salty about it. So the fact that you put yourself into it, I think it says a lot about you.
Try to. Every family was different. Some families were like, this is kind of weird.
Sure.
You guys are acting weird, but
Yeah, that's fair. But funerals are also weird.
Funerals are weird.
They make people very weird.
Yeah, and people don't people need to relax a little bit with it, because I feel like if they knew the person that passed as well, if they have a sense of humor, there's no humor there at the like me. Were you a pallbearer ever?
Not for any of those.
Like
No.
me, I every time I carried those things, I was like, "Don't drop this son of a bitch."
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like this would be really embarrassing.
Yeah, and then you're there, at the reception, and you're having conversations, and you're joking about what they used to joke about, and the families are looking at you like you're a problem.
Because that sense of humor is particular. Yeah. I definitely understand that.
It's time to I don't know about you, but when you get to choose your song, like in your will and stuff. I had the most ridiculous songs picked out. Like,
why not?
Rick Astley.
Rock You Like a Hurricane.
Yeah. Never gonna give you up.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's another thing is they are so somber. It's just so taxing to be at these events, and that Marine, I'm sure, had a specific sense of humor that it's going to be okay. And the families do sometimes need to relax a little bit.
Yeah, you ever met an old Marine? It's hilarious.
Yeah. Who's that Marine? The devil dog guy?
Oh yeah. He's got the big old belly.
Golly,
screaming about.
Just drinks a whole gallon of Fireball.
He was popular on social media for a few a couple years.
Just started barking at people.
This old Marine. Yeah. Devil dogs.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Yeah.
I love that. So that's quite quite the number, 200 of those. Now, at this time, you got to be having some feelings about getting out of the Marine Corps. One, you were a pistol instructor first. So talk about that transition, like going from a fueler to that.
So it's technically a B billet. So on top of your primary responsibilities, as mine was a bulk fueler, 1391, I had a secondary billet, which was a coach. And so on the Marine Corps rifle ranges, I would coach all like my entire company. Like we had 2 or 3 coaches, and like we would be running the rifle range. And so I would be coaching Marines like, okay, you need to like tweak this. Don't jerk the trigger. Like your scope shadow is bad. Like your eye relief is bad, whatever. Just coaching for getting them to qualify. And not only qualify, I wanted all my guys to shoot expert.
So what kind of additional training did you go to, like instructor course? Or?
So there's a Marine Corps. The Marine Corps rifle range is now different. It changed right as I was transitioning out of the Marine Corps. But at the time I went, it was a coach's course, which was a 2-week reserve course down in Quantico, Virginia. And you would essentially learn like ballistic fundamentals, and really a lot of your time was focused on how do you be the best teacher. Like, and I've learned this lesson so many times where like I think I know something really well, and then I go to try to teach it, and it's like, oh, maybe I don't know this as well as I should. I've never learned something more than when I was trying to teach something.
Absolutely.
Yeah. True story.
So like I was a welding instructor for a little while, and I thought I knew how to weld, and then I tried to teach somebody how to weld, and I was like, well,
I don't know.
maybe I don't know how to weld. Yeah, because I can't explain it. But so you go through the course, and you do rifle and pistol while you're there. So you do a rifle course, how to teach a rifle course, how to run a rifle range, and you focus very, very heavily on the fundamentals. And then you go through the pistol course and you do the exact same thing, and voila, you have a Marine Corps rifle pistol instructor. And then you just carry on from there. But that doesn't take over your primary responsibilities as, like, for me, a bulk fueler.
Sure.
And the time I was on those ADOS orders, those active orders, that was only 1 year of my time. So like all of those funerals, that was only a 1 year time span.
Yeah.
Wow. So I still had a lot, and that was probably my first to second year in the Marine Corps. I still had like 4 years to go. And the majority of that time was spent either just honing your skills, honing your skills in your MOS as a bulk fueler. Okay, let's set up a fuel farm. Let's take down a fuel farm. How can we do this more efficiently? And the Marine Corps, when I was getting out, was transitioning into a more efficient, low profile and rapid deployable fuel site. So essentially, like, can we set up an entire fuel farm without any HE support? And the answer is like, yes, if you want injuries. But there's a lot of transitioning like that happening now across the military, as far as I can see, because of like near peer adversaries, instead of operating in like a coin environment where you're not worried about overhead like attack, essentially, and you have air superiority, and I can have HE operators out there at all times. So a lot of what we're going to, and a lot of what the Marine Corps was going to when I got out of the Marine Corps, was low profile, so like harder targets to hit, and rapid deployable, and minimal resource, which you could say minimal resource for the entire Marine Corps existence, but like it's like legit minimal resource. So yeah.
So, and then why were you done with the Marine Corps?
I love the Marine Corps. I still do. And I still use every opportunity to try and talk and associate and get with the Marine Corps. But if the Marine Corps had medics, I'd still be there. And corpsman doesn't count, in my opinion. The only reason I didn't go the corpsman route was because I knew that the capacity that I was going to be serving in was a guard or reserve capacity. I knew I wasn't.
Makes sense.
I knew I wasn't going to be able to serve in a active or full-time capacity, and I knew that the Naval Corpsman Reserve I wasn't going to be able to do the thing I wanted to do, which was stay in the Marine Corps and be a medic.
Yeah.
I knew those two things weren't going to happen.
I'm sure this is heavily influenced by you having a family.
Yeah. So I have a wife, I have a daughter, we have 2 dogs. I have a
Daughter is very young.
very young. She is 10 months. She'll be 11 months in actually today, she's 11 months. So I wanted to be home for that. But I still wanted to serve. I still wanted to do stuff.
It's the perfect balance, to be honest.
And I was like, all right, well,
and I have this conversation all the time with individuals is to be the best of the best, you got to give your all into one or the other.
Yeah.
you know, and you see that across the board with all of these guys. I mean, how many people have we talked to on this show where they've had at least one failed marriage, you know?
Yeah.
Because you're married to that Marine Corps, married to the Army. So I think what you did was a great balance in finding reserve or the Air Guard, whatever it is. You could still have that capacity to serve, but still go all in on your family.
Oh yeah.
I think that's important.
And that was my intent, was like, let's be home, let's do our thing. Also, when I was getting out of the Marine Corps, it was 2022. And I was like, there's no way there's not some kind of near peer adversary like on the horizon. I don't want to get called up in 2 to 4 years and then have someone else be dictating what I'm doing and where I'm going necessarily. I wanted to have a little bit more control over my placement and in what capacity I was serving. So I decided to make those decisions on my terms.
Fair.
Absolutely fair.
Fair.
So what prompted the desire to go into the medic route?
I was a volunteer firefighter for a time, and about 4 or 5 years while I was in high school. So I was trying to fill that time as well. And in that time, I really enjoyed my time riding on an ambulance and doing that. And I wanted to continue doing that. My mom is a nurse, and she has been my whole life. And she actually works at the VA as like a QA, QI, like manager or what have you. And so I liked medicine. And I had a buddy who I knew through the fire company who was a reservist at this particular guard unit. And I talked to him and I was like, yeah, this is like kind of what I'm looking at. And he's like, well, come like talk to the prior service recruiter and see like how you feel about it. And I was like, cool. And so I did. And I was like, wow, that sounds like about as high speed, low drag as a guard member could get. So I was like all for it, which is it's an AE unit or it's an operations guard unit. And so my job is AE, which is like aeromedical evacuation. And so we do a lot of the transports on C-17s and C-130s for stabilized patients from like, you know, all over the place or back overseas. They did a lot of evacuations during the withdrawal and pull out of Afghanistan.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew a couple of guys on those missions with the AE. I think that unit specifically, actually.
Yeah, the 142nd.
Yep. Yeah, I've ridden on your airplanes many times.
Oh yeah,
back in the day. That's cool. That's what that prompted it. Now you're actively pursuing it. So you're just about to finish up your 4N for the Air Force. And how's that program been?
The program's been really good. It was super accelerated. I went through EMT one other time on the civilian side with the fire company that accelerated EMT program, which does not encompass everything that 4N does. Was about 9 weeks at the schoolhouse here. They do National Registry EMT in about 6. So I mean, you're drinking through a fire hose the entire time. And to be honest, I wouldn't have it any other way because I get bored real fast. So we're doing that. And then once you finish your EMT, you have an additional about 4.5 weeks going through a nursing program, nursing skills and abilities. So things that EMTs typically do not do, understanding a wider range of medications, as well as more advanced wound management, and as well as catheters, NG tubes, and IVs. And so we just finished our catheter skill the other day. So, you know, if you need that,
Definitely
I'm
not
here for you. So.
Definitely not. I got away with no catheter when I was injured, which I'm very proud of.
I love that story.
I'll hold it.
I'll hold it. Sir, your bladder is about to burst.
That's good.
Yeah. Trust me, I'll be all right.
I'll be fine. Just squeeze me.
Biological entities have both those sort of things.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, well,
Well, Siri's listening, huh?
Yeah.
they always are.
Talking about bladders.
Always listening.
So we finished our nursing skills in 2 weeks.
Okay.
I finished up giving IVs. And after that, because I'm AE, I'll be going to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, doing my phase 2, which is all clinical time. You do about 45 days, about 6 weeks there, and with actual hands-on patients. And then after that, water survival, SEER, and flight school back at Wright-Patterson.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds great. So start to finish, how long does the program typically run?
If you're running through it like back to back, with like no time in between, you got about 3.5 months here. I think water survival is only like a week. I think SEER is 2.5 weeks, give or take. And then flight school is about 2.5 months. So you're looking at, what's that, 7 months?
Yeah,
give or
7-8
take.
months. Okay.
If you would hit everything back to back, some guard units just depends on like the funding and the budget. I kind of timed this one out a little perfectly because by the time I'm finished my phase 2 of the clinical management, I'll be going back to the unit, and we'll be in August. So like by the time October rolls around, that first of the new fiscal, I should be right back out the door. Hopefully, if that works itself out that way.
That's fantastic. So, how long you plan on staying in?
I play it by year. October makes 8 years for me.
Nice.
So I play it by year. This contract, I mean, I have to go to the end of this contract, which will put me at 12. But I mean, once you're at 12, it kind of seems like, well,
You might as well finish.
and I mean, if I'm in guard anyway, 20 is probably not that bad.
Yeah, you can kind of manage your time there.
So, on the civilian side, what are you doing?
Civilian side, I started not right out of high school, but when I got home from the Marine Corps to go to my reserve unit as a welder. And that was not a program or schoolhouse or trade schooling that I went through. That was entirely by luck and happenstance. I was like looking for jobs on Indeed because I was 19, and there was a guy who messaged me on Facebook, and he's like, "Hey, I see you're a Marine. I'm also a prior Marine," and he was like a captain, infantry officer, and he's like, "I need a foreman to like drive my trucks," and I'm like, "I can drive a truck," so cool. And he's like, "I also need you to weld," and I'm like, "Well, I don't know how to do that." And he's like, "Don't even worry about it." So.
Nice.
I ended up with this guy fixing dumpsters, roll-off containers, trash trucks, anything that you can think about that involves waste. Essentially, we fixed it, which is a untapped or unthought of like job opportunity, because like everybody has trash. It doesn't matter if the economy's great or the economy's bad. Like everybody has trash. So fixing trash trucks and fixing dumpsters, like I was all for it. I did that for about 3-4 years. And then eventually I wanted a little bit more out of like my welding, and I got a new job, and that took me further. And then I changed that job, got a new job, that took me further. And I just like flip flop until I end up where I am now as a certified pipe welder for a HVAC company. I don't do a lot of HVAC, but I do a lot of welding for them, and up at Aberdeen, some stuff at like Aberdeen Proving Ground, but all over really, putting their steam and condensate pipe in the ground and stainless steel and all that good stuff.
Have you ever thought of underwater welding?
Yeah, everybody loves that question. You have to be in the right area for it. So like in Delaware, not a big market for it because like the marinas aren't as big, and there just isn't a lot of like opportunity for that. You really have to go somewhere where that's in demand. Like you could take the course, but then you'd have to move.
I heard it's wildly dangerous.
It can be if like you're doing it wrong or if something goes wrong. I mean, but like, can you say that about everything?
Some things.
Yeah. Because it's electricity underwater, and water conducts electricity. So like you could get shocked, and you've got like 200 amps.
1,000 things that could go wrong.
Oh, man.
With that.
Yeah.
I've also, it's not beautiful water. Like a lot of what you're diving in is like,
It's nasty.
Murky.
could be mud, like
Yeah.
complete mud. These guys are blind when they're going down there, you know? So that's wild stuff. So, but definitely a trade skill that a lot of people don't have. Do you do anything like hobby wise with welding?
I love welding in general. I never thought of being a welder. It just happened that way. But I've always enjoyed it. And so if there's something, a side project, my neighbor, he's like building a car, and he's like, I have a roll cage that I'm putting in my car. Could you weld it? It's like, yeah, sure.
For a price.
No problem. He fixes my truck. I weld his car or whatever.
Nice. Yeah.
That's a good trade.
It's fine.
Yeah. Having those trade skills though, that's when they pay off though. When you're doing those little projects and stuff.
sure.
Like I can do this project
I could totally do this
all by
project.
myself. Yeah.
That's a good skill to have.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of projects,
Mm-hmm.
I know that you are trying to, or you're considering, kind of are starting a new initiative, and that's kind of what I was alluding to by being a different episode. I want to talk about the Middleman Initiative and what you're trying to do there, and see the direction that you're headed.
Yeah, the intent, or my intent anyway, was I see there are about 45,000 veteran nonprofits in the United States right now. So I feel like that base was widely covered, and I didn't see necessarily a reason for me to start a nonprofit, but I didn't want to do nothing either. As I alluded to earlier, I've had one friend who was in the Marine Corps who committed suicide, and then I had a second mentor supervisor who was one of my best friends who was not in the military. He was a welder, and he committed suicide as well. And that's enough for me. I don't need any more. I don't want to bury any more friends.
Yeah.
So I decided to just take initiative, which I think, like, I've heard a lot in my life, and I think a lot of people in the military have, is like, just take the initiative. And so that was my intent with the Middleman Initiative, was to act as the middleman, as a go-between for individuals in crisis or in struggling moments, or even not even necessarily in jeopardy, but just in a difficult kind of rut, and get them out of that rut, and act as the middleman to connect them to the resources that they need, in whatever capacity that looks like.
And specifically with blue collar workers.
Specifically with blue collar workers, because I've seen, I try not to get too lost in the numbers, and my wife likes to tell me how much I ramble, which is fine. But like, we look at veteran suicide rates, and like 33.9 per 100,000 in 2021, which is arguably one of the highest rates out there. And if you look at, there's an organization you two might be familiar with called American Warrior Partnership. They conducted research called Operation Deep Dive. And if you look at Operation Deep Dive, which I believe was done 2 years ago, they looked at across 8 states, because the veteran suicide statistics are only done by the VA, and the only people allowed to do research within the VA or on veterans, not on veterans, but for veterans within the VA, is the VA. So it's kind of like me conducting research on myself and saying I'm fine.
Yeah.
Well, there's also a plethora of individuals that aren't currently enrolled in the VA.
Correct.
And that's really, it's a staggering number.
Yeah, a lot. And so what Operation Deep Dive looked at was individuals outside of the VA who committed suicide, but not only committed suicide based on the death certificate, but also acts or events that caused death that were not determined suicide by a coroner or an examiner. So you look at individuals who might have crashed their car because they thought their family was going to be better off with the insurance money than they were going to be with that person being around, which is never true. But sometimes we get put in that headspace, and it's hard to pull ourselves out. So individuals who do things like that, but not only that, but also say things like opioid or drug overdoses, or other accidental death, things that might be deemed accidental, but were actually, to people who recognize it, either a call for help or a suicidal act that is not determined suicide. If you look at those numbers, and you look at what they call former service members, which is Guard, Active Reserve, veteran. If they look at former service members, they determined that the daily suicide rate by veterans was not actually 22 a day, but more like 44 a day.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, big problems there. And then I started.
Yeah, and that's and I got to stop you there,
Yeah,
because we talk about this all the time. Is they had the majority of the population has the number 22 stuck in their head.
Yeah.
And that worked a decade and a half ago.
Yeah.
Like, but we are seeing an exponential rise.
Hugely.
I mean, if I remember seeing this presentation essentially where you just see like the spike is exponential.
Oh,
on
the
suicide.
graph?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
graph.
yeah, the graph.
Where it compares the actual deaths.
Yep.
You know, through the decades that were military related.
Yep.
You know, deployment related, whatever that was. And then the suicide rate is just exponentially higher.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a really good note. So according to the VA, it was closer to 29. Went
Yeah.
to 29. But yes, with the new, which came out in 2022, by the way, right?
Yeah, 2022. That
22,
was it.
that report stopped, but hit about 44.
Yeah. And like one other note, which I couldn't find any more recent information on outside of like 2009 information, which was conducted by the VA, comparing veterans who experienced combat, not even necessarily combat related MOSs, but just those who had deployment experience and those who didn't have deployment experience. And those without deployment experience, they saw a increase in suicide rate in the non-combat oriented MOSs than they did in combat oriented MOSs. I have my own thoughts on that. I don't want to like dive too deep, but we can do whatever you want to do here.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so like, I think I joined the Marine Corps, right? And I wanted to go do that. My intent was to be deployed and go do that job, right? If you take a admin who's, not to shit on admin, if you take any other non-combat oriented MOS and put them in a deployed environment and then they're doing their job and then all of a sudden, like the motor T officer comes over and he's like, hey, we need an A driver. Friggin' you're it, bud. So hop in this truck because we got to run through Ramadi real quick.
Yeah.
And the guy who's on the 50 cal, he wants to be there. This is why he signed up to do that job. The dude who's that A driver, maybe not always. Like, I think in the Marine Corps, it's a little bit better off because the Marines say like, yeah, you're going to be deployed and you're probably going to see that.
Yeah.
But it's not always the case with every non-combat oriented MOS, which, as you know, is like between 18 and 22 non-combat oriented MOSs to support one infantry MOS.
Yeah. And that's stress inducement.
Yes.
So when we look at that, it is a very provable factor within psychology.
Yeah.
That when it's stress management at the end of the day, right? And what is PTS but just stress?
Yeah.
Right? Post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
So when you constantly reinforce this, the Marines is a great example of this as well. You know, screaming down your throat, and we're making you crawl through the mud. You know, do these uncomfortable things when you get into that environment. Especially like Rangers, we thought deployments were vacation compared to the training environments, right? So you have this stress management that is very different as opposed to like being unexpected. This is why civilians are much more prone to post-traumatic stress than a combat veteran is, right? When you watch your friend get mowed down across the street, like we have nothing to fall back onto to correlate that stress to. So absolutely provable fact.
So that was one of the things, and like I wish there was a more recent statistic, and maybe there is, I just haven't found it since the 2009 information, that non-combat oriented MOSs were at a higher likelihood for suicide than combat oriented MOSs. Make of that what you will. My friend who committed suicide, we weren't combat oriented MOSs, we're fuelers, you know? So I don't know what to do with that, but
and regardless, and you said this earlier, is this paralysis through analysis.
Yeah.
Essentially. And we just have to understand as a whole that it's a problem and it needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Regardless of the mentality behind the reasoning behind it, whatever it is, it is a problem. It's increasing. And we need initiatives like you're working on that really solve this issue or provide a helping hand for those who need it.
So yeah, to bring everything full circle here, the Middlemen Initiative I started was because I wanted to meet guys where they were walk the path with them to getting help, and not just like drop them off at the front door and like, okay, like this is your stop, right? But like also make sure that the care they're receiving is like appropriate for them. And I'm not a mental health like expert. Like I have 0 hours of college education, but I think it can be obvious when like a guy is getting help and like he's looking better, doing better, what have you, and he's not. And so I don't just want to drop a guy off at the front door and be like, see you later. So my intent was to walk with a guy through the entire step of the process until it's obvious that he is standing on his own 2 feet to me. And so the way I do that, or what I've been trying to do, has been through listening to podcasts like yours, which I think, just from a listener's perspective, because that's what I am, has been incredibly beneficial to, I would say for myself, but like I can't imagine for everybody else that listens, like it hasn't helped. It's been an amazing time listening to you guys. But listening to you guys and other associated podcasts and writing down and noting all of the resources that have been listed over that amount of time. I've been listening to podcasts since like, I don't know, 2000 and
Late.
yeah,
2000 late.
So, but every time I heard something interesting, I wrote it down, or I put it, and I made a folder in my like Windows tab, right? And now this folder has accumulated like hundreds of like, oh, this helps with this, and these people help with this, and these, do whatever. And then I was looking at this tab one day because I was at my unit in the Guard, and one of the people there, they were talking about GoRuck, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with.
Yeah.
And like they do a lot of stuff with veterans and all that stuff. And they were like, yeah, like these people, like they help and do whatever. And I was like, yeah, that's really cool. We got into a conversation, and I'm like, and there's also this company, and there's also this company, and there's also this company.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait a second, maybe I could do something here.
I've already built the resources list.
Because and it was stupid that it took me that long to like connect the dots here. But essentially, I had accumulated so many resources and felt up to the task of jumping into something that I have no business necessarily being in, and working my way through it. That is to say, someone needs help as far as either talking someone off a cliff when they're at their lowest, or finding someone a new job that is going to be more beneficial to them, their family, their mental health, so that they don't end up getting to that point. That's left to bang as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
So that has been my intent. And like, I've helped some guys like find jobs and whatnot. And like, so far, like that's been certainly making the move. And before all this started, like I've talked guys down off a cliff, but I don't know what anything in the future for me and the Middleman Initiative looks like. I just know what I'm doing right now in this moment.
So is this something that you want to grow?
Oh, for sure.
I know you said you don't have an idea of what it looks like, but what is your hope for it?
My intent or my hope is that guys, it's hard to say people will proactively reach out, because I don't think that's accurate in our community.
Yeah.
A lot of guys won't, just won't. But maybe if I make it obvious enough that you don't even necessarily have to talk to me that much. I think it's very intimidating for people to try and find the resources themselves.
Yeah.
I need help with this and I don't know where to start. So I think if I make it obvious enough that like that is something I'm providing, and like I don't take any money for anything. Like I'm not a nonprofit, and I don't $0 get passed here.
Yeah.
If you give me money, I'm just going to give it to another organization.
Sure.
And so, but I think if I make it obvious enough that I can connect you with something that might help, because I understand navigating, okay, what this company does and what that company does, and do these people help, and these people, like, not that they don't, but they focus on something else. Well, then maybe taking the edge off of that intimidation, of that paralysis by analysis, would get people to be like, hey, I'm kind of fucked up about this. Like, what's up?
So how do you get the word out?
How do I get the word out? I have no idea because I'm horrible at social media, but thus far,
So that would be the biggest thing on my end too. Is just it's hard to do without a nonprofit, and it's hard to do to like just a couple things to look at. Is it's hard to do without mental health training as well.
that too.
So like, but what you're talking about here, like there's two salient characteristics I would say is one, peer-to-peer support. It's very important, very necessary. And two is an organizational structure for community events, right? So it's creating a community, a Facebook group, an Instagram group, whatever that looks like, where you're bringing together these like-minded individuals that you could provide resources for. So what's your next steps for that? What are the challenges you're facing there? How are you scaling this?
That's a good question. I don't think I have necessarily put enough time or thought into that. I've just been moving, if that makes sense. So with more information, like certainly from you guys and like abroad, it's something that I can look at now because I didn't think about it.
Yeah, let's take it from the scope of more consideration than planning, right? So when like Dave prompted two kind of different options there, right? So if you look into something more structured, like forming an organization, a nonprofit, you're looking into a lot of time investment, financial investment. There's a lot that goes into that. But I think the second point that he had, which I would think is more applicable here, and a much easier place to start, is forming your own community, right? And that can be as simple as this is an initiative, right? You're trying to be somewhat of a lighthouse as far as resources and a place where resources can go to live.
Yeah.
But what do you do after that, right? How do you build a community? And you can do it as simply as starting a secondary initiative to where like, hey, every Sunday I call a friend and I post on social media, hey, it's Sunday, make sure you call at least one friend today, right? So you're not forcing the hand, but you're inviting somebody to take their own initiative to be a part of this new community now, simply by doing a Sunday phone call, right? And I've seen other organizations do very simple things like that, but that is where your community started because you posted on social media through that page. Hey, I'm calling 3 buddies today who I haven't talked to in 6 months or a year to check on them, see how they're doing. I'm challenging you to do the same thing, and then you'll have 3 guys do it that same day, and then next week maybe it's 5 guys.
An accountability system.
Yes, absolutely, and report back. Hey, who did you talk to? What did you talk about? How did the call go? Like, have them push that back into your group channel so people can see, hey, there's efficacy here. And that way you have no organizational costs, no financial stressors, there's no timeline requirements. It's a simple thing that starts with
sharing resources.
Single phone call
is a great one too. So you're having an accountability tracking system to make sure that, hey, all you got to do, someone who is invited to this group, bring a friend next time. And that friend brings a friend who needs it, right? And then you have that open line of communication where you're providing resources. Hey, it's Monday. Today I want to go over resources that I thought were interesting and neat. Hunter 7 Foundation has free cancer screening for veterans. Yeah. Stuff like that. And you keep this engagement going. I think that this is a huge thing Christian and I talk about all the time, is that we're lacking community in our society today. We might be more connected than ever. But outside of our phones, like what are we doing? We're not looking up, and that's a huge factor here. So people want this, they crave this. This is what you see at the TAC events, the Terra Armor Adventure Clubs. Where we're finding that it's not about the workout. It's not about going to a hike. It's about what happens on the trail when people are opening up and talking about their experiences. And then all of a sudden, they're like, oh shit, my phone has been off for 4 hours. And now I'm talking about, something that's going to help my family. It's going to help my friends out. It's keeping me sane. I think we had this conversation last month when an individual came up to one of our instructors and had really was like, I have no one to talk to about this, but I'm having suicidal ideations. So this, like, right after this workout turned into almost this kind of counseling session, where we were able to provide a platform for him to just talk. Right. So I think that's what people need nowadays.
Yeah. Fair enough. And like I say, it was just one of those because this is all very new. Started within, or like, I made the Instagram handle and I made the Facebook handle, and I made under 24 posts, right? And that's all happened within like a year, and so very new, but I've never not been helping people at the same time. So, but the feedback, at least that you're giving me, works really well. So I'm probably going to take that and run with it.
Food for thought, brother. Food for thought.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, that's Sebastian Junger's tribe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And
Yep. And that's a great read. Great read.
Oh yeah, I love that book. That's a great book. So, yeah, man.
well, I think that sounds like you got some decent direction now, and maybe you can apply some of these tactics and procedures and see what happens. Maybe over the next 6 months, maybe this will grow into something that it can live as its own living resource page.
Yeah, hopefully.
And we invite you as well to, that's something that Christian and I have been really wanting to do too, is have resources. So if you have ideas as well, please share it with us, and we'll incorporate it to what we're doing in the podcast as well, and share some of these resources on our page.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, that seems reasonable enough. I can make that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everything I've talked a lot about veterans. I'm in the blue collar workforce. A lot of what I do, my foreman, he was a non-military guy. He also took his own life. There's also a lot of blue collar suicide out there as well. And I think a lot of guys feel really trapped in their job because it's like, well, I need to make the bills. So that's like where we're at. And in the unions, you see a lot of like connectiveness. Outside of that, it's like very dog eat dog. So a lot of my efforts have also been focused towards that blue collar workforce, because these are the people that I work with it Monday through Friday every day.
Yeah.
And I get to go play military once a month.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that has been a big push for me as well. I didn't want to just leave them out. So.
No, absolutely.
No, I think it's important, just losing your best friend as well, who's a welder. And there's a lot of similarities to that. And we could dive into a whole different topic of just even going out once a month for you. Breaks up that monotony and allows you to see a different perspective and bring a whole new community to that as well, which is much needed. So
and like you said, there are 45,000 plus military veteran nonprofits out there. There's not a whole lot that are geared towards the blue collar workers.
I haven't found any.
Yeah. So when you're doing this and when you're starting this, appeal to them like, hey, you guys might not be military veterans, but we are. We share something, right? We share commonalities, and these are the statistics about the people who share our commonalities, right? This is our demographic. We need to own that for ourselves, and maybe take some of the same tactics and procedures that you see other military veteran nonprofits applying, and just apply it to your own community, right? To that blue collar community, get them engaged and get them speaking to each other, because a resource page and a community like that can exist again without any financial need or any traditional organized or structured organization, right? It doesn't need to exist like that. So you can apply that same thing there, and who knows, maybe this will be a brand new resource that assists a lot of people in that community.
Hopefully.
Breaking up the stigma as well. The monotony is important, right? Just change your routine up. Don't get stuck in it. But the stigma of you're not tough if you're hurting,
That's
right?
true.
I think that's a big push we've done since day one on this show is the tough pretender mentality, right? Is that you could, and we have seen and worked with the toughest men on this planet, and seen how broken they become when they just bottle it up. So it's the same thing with the blue collar workers. I know, like especially these petroleum guys, who are in the field. It's like, oh, just rub some dirt on it. Nah, that ain't gonna work for this, brother.
Yeah.
Probably not. Not
So
always.
education and implementing that, taking what Christian said, taking those mentalities, those philosophies from these organized structures and implementing into this world is really important.
Yeah. So hopefully something works out.
Well, thanks for coming on and sharing, man. I
Yeah.
think that's really beautiful what you got going on, and we got to thank you for your service as well. 2 branches, that's pretty cool. I always like that. So
Yeah.
I'll hit them all before I'm done.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just kind of transition through all of them. Do you have anything for the audience before we go today? Any words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom. The only thing you can control in life is your input and your attitude. Those are the only two things that you have control over. Everything else is for the birds. So if there's something that you are struggling with and you have control over it, then do everything in your ability to get control of it. But a lot of people stress about the things they can't control. And so how much input, how much effort can I put towards this thing? And if I can't put any effort towards it, then the only thing I can control at that point is my attitude towards it. And my attitude towards the things I can't control is going to be pretty ambiguous because it is out of my control. I can choose how I respond to something. Certainly, something was out of my control. It now affects me. And so now I'm responding in a way, but I can control that response, or I'm trying. Let me be clear. I set the bar incredibly high and never meet it, but I'm always aiming small, missing small. But that works for me. So
I like it.
the only two things in life that you could control are your input and your attitude, and everything else is going to be for the birds. Since Dan Holloway.
Beautiful.
There you
Beautifully put.
Well, thanks for your
where,
time, Sam.
Where can we find you?
Oh, yeah.
Instagram and Facebook at the Middleman Initiative, and that's it. Yeah,
Perfect.
The Middleman Initiative.
yeah,
Well, thanks for coming on and sharing today. We really appreciate you.
absolutely. Thank you guys.
Yeah, of course. This has been the Medevac Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching today. We will see y'all next week.
See you next time.